The Middle Ages, a time often imagined as one of grand castles, valiant knights, and sweeping epics. But beneath that romanticized surface lay a society governed by stark realities, where justice was often swift, brutal, and perhaps most powerfully, exceptionally public. We tend to think of punishment in terms of confinement or even physical harm. But for a medieval person, the most terrifying prospect wasn't always the dungeon, nor even the gallows, but the utter destruction of their reputation, their standing, their very sense of self, played out before the eyes of everyone they knew. Because in a tightly knit community, where one's honor was intertwined with their survival, public humiliation was a weapon far more potent, far more insidious than any blade or prison cell. It was designed not just to punish the individual, but to brand them, to ostracize them, to make an example that resonated through every hearth and market square. Imagine, for a moment, being utterly stripped of your dignity, subjected to the scorn, the ridicule, the outright aggression of your neighbors, not in secret, but right there, in the town center, where every jeer, every thrown piece of refuse chipped away at your soul. This wasn't merely about suffering. It was about existing, afterward, as a shadow, a pariah, someone irrevocably tainted in the eyes of everyone who mattered. It was a punishment that lingered long after the physical discomfort faded, a sentence carried not on the body, but in the memory of a scornful crowd. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this chilling aspect of medieval life, delving into 4 distinct ways people were publicly humiliated, exploring not just the mechanics of these grim spectacles, but the profound psychological impact they wielded. We'll see how these methods served as powerful tools of social control, reinforcing communal values and deterring others through sheer, inescapable shame. It's a journey into a past where the concept of privacy was almost non-existent, and where the collective gaze of the community could be a force more crushing than any medieval torture device. Let's begin with perhaps the most iconic image of medieval public shaming, the pillory and the stocks. You've seen them in films, in illustrations, those wooden frames designed to secure a person, exposing them to the raw, unfiltered judgment of the populace. And while often used interchangeably in common parlance, they actually had distinct applications. The stocks typically confined a person's feet, sometimes their hands as well, usually placing them low to the ground. The pillory, on the other hand, held the head and hands, often at an awkward, elevated height, ensuring maximum discomfort and visibility. Picture it, a central marketplace, bustling with life, suddenly silenced as a convicted individual is brought forth. Their arms are threaded through holes, their neck secured in another, the heavy wooden beam clamping shut. They are utterly defenseless, unable to move freely, unable to even shield their face. This was not a quick ordeal. Sentences could range from a few hours to an entire day, or even multiple days for repeat offenders. And the crowd, the crowd was an integral part of the punishment. It was a macabre form of street theater, with the unfortunate soul as the star. People didn't just observe, they participated. They hurled insults, verbal abuse that cut deeper than any stone. They threw rotten fruit, mud, even animal carcasses or excrement. The purpose was clear: to inflict shame, to deter, and to entertain. The sheer public spectacle served to reinforce authority and deter others from similar offenses. The psychological toll of the pillory or stocks must have been immense. Imagine being frozen in place, forced to endure hours of jeers and physical abuse, utterly powerless, your reputation dissolving with every passing minute. It wasn't just the pain or discomfort, it was the stripping away of one's humanity, the transformation from a person into an object of public scorn. For some, it might have been preferable to a whipping, which, while painful, eventually ended. But the pillory forced you to confront the collective hatred and disgust of your community, knowing that every single person present would remember your shame. And sometimes, the physical abuse from an overzealous crowd could turn deadly, with people maimed or even killed by thrown stones or bricks. Moving beyond the physical restraint, we delve into a method designed specifically to control and humiliate through water: the ducking stool, also known as the cucking stool. This was a particularly vivid and frankly terrifying form of public shaming, often reserved for women accused of being scolds, gossips, or common disturbers of the peace. But it wasn't exclusively for women. Dishonest brewers, bakers who sold short weight, or other unruly individuals could also find themselves strapped to this device. The ducking stool was essentially a chair, sometimes quite elaborate, attached to a long arm or beam that pivoted over a body of water, a pond, a river, or even a specially dug pit. The condemned would be securely fastened into the chair and then, repeatedly, plunged into the cold, murky water. The number of duckings could vary, but each immersion was a spectacle, designed to draw a crowd and maximize humiliation. The crowd would gather, jeering and laughing, watching as the victim emerged, dripping and gasping, only to be plunged back in again. The chilling symbolism of purification, of washing away their perceived sins through this degrading ordeal, was inescapable. This was more than just a cold bath. It was a physical and emotional assault. The shock of the cold water, the fear of drowning, the sheer indignity of being subjected to such an ordeal while completely helpless before a jeering audience, it left a profound mark. The vulnerability was absolute. Imagine the terror of being submerged, unable to breathe, then hauled back up for a moment of gasping air, only to know it would happen again and again and again. It was a performance of subjugation, designed to break the spirit and enforce societal norms, particularly those relating to women's behavior and speech. Our third method of medieval humiliation targeted a very specific offense: unrestrained, often critical, speech. This brings us to the chilling invention known as the scold's bridle, or sometimes the brink, primarily, though not exclusively, used on women. This was a truly dehumanizing device meant to silence those deemed scolds, gossips, or those who dared to rebuke a man. The scold's bridle was an iron muzzle, a cage that fitted over the entire head, often with a flat plate or sometimes even a spiked gag that was forced into the wearer's mouth. This plate pressed down on the tongue, making speech utterly impossible. In some more gruesome versions, the gag was covered in sharp spikes, designed to lacerate the tongue if the wearer attempted to speak. Once fitted, the unfortunate individual would be led through the streets, sometimes tied to a post, or even paraded on a leash by an official, their face contorted by the metal, unable to utter a sound, yet fully exposed to public view. The cruelty here was refined, psychological. It wasn't just about pain, though that was certainly present. It was about stripping away a fundamental human faculty, the ability to speak, to express oneself, to articulate a defense, or even a complaint. It symbolized the complete subjugation of the individual's voice and will. The silence imposed by the bridle was deafening, drawing attention not only to the offense, but to the absolute power of the community, or often, specifically, the male authority to enforce conformity. It was a tangible representation of a society's desire to control speech, especially that which challenged the established order. The shame was inherent in the device itself, a visible declaration of transgression, a public gagging that branded the wearer as a societal troublemaker. Finally, we turn to a form of humiliation that relied less on specialized devices and more on forced public display and symbolic attire, the wearing of shameful garments or signs. This category encompasses a range of punishments designed to mark an individual publicly, making their offense clear to all who saw them. It was about creating a walking billboard of their transgression, a permanent, albeit temporary, stigma. This could take many forms. Debtors, for instance, might be forced to wear iron collars or chains, symbolizing their inability to meet obligations, and paraded through the streets. In other cases, individuals might be compelled to wear specific, often outlandish clothing or hats, the dunce cap for poor students, for example, or a cloak of shame for those who committed moral offenses. The mantle of shame was a particularly heavy, cumbersome garment, perhaps made of barrel staves or similar materials, forcing the wearer into an ungainly and highly visible spectacle. These garments were not merely uncomfortable. They were designed to be conspicuous, ensuring that the wearer stood out in any crowd, their crimes silently, but powerfully, proclaimed. Sometimes, the shaming was even more direct. Individuals might have placards or signs hung around their necks or affixed to them, explicitly detailing their crime. This is a false, perjured, and forsworn man. A sign might declare for a perjurer, or simply a cheat for a dishonest merchant. This ensured that even strangers knew exactly what ignominy the person was suffering for. For some crimes, such as witchcraft or heresy, offenders might be forced to wear penitential robes or other distinctive symbols, often making them targets for further scorn or even violence. The power of this form of humiliation lay in its ability to follow the individual wherever they went during their sentence. There was no escape from the public gaze, no corner to hide in. Every glance, every whispered comment, every averted eye reinforced their degraded status. It stripped away their identity, reducing them to the label of their crime. The psychological impact was profound. Imagine being unable to blend in, to escape the constant reminder of your transgression, to live under the weight of perpetual judgment. It served as a stark, living warning to others, a constant visual sermon on the consequences of deviance. These four methods, the pillory and stocks, the ducking stool, the scold's bridle, and the wearing of shameful garments, offer a grim window into the medieval mindset regarding crime and punishment. They weren't just about physical pain, though that was often present. They were fundamentally about social control through psychological torment. The goal was to inflict such profound shame and ostracism that the individual would be utterly reformed, or, at the very least, serve as an unforgettable deterrent for anyone else contemplating similar misdeeds. The absence of modern policing meant that communities relied heavily on these public displays to enforce social order and communal values. Justice was a public spectacle, a collective reaffirmation of right and wrong. The entire town became the jury, the judge, and often the executioner of shame. The humiliation wasn't a side effect. It was the primary intent, designed to leave an indelible mark on the offender's psyche and on the memory of the community. The psychological effects of such punishments were, as you can imagine, devastating. Beyond the immediate emotional torment and social humiliation, individuals subjected to these ordeals could suffer long-term psychological trauma. Apathy, paranoia, anxiety, or even PTSD could develop. Their social standing, their honor, was irrevocably damaged, leading to ostracism that could last long after their sentence was technically served. In a society where your identity was so tied to your place within the community, being publicly shamed was akin to a social death. It's a fascinating, albeit uncomfortable exercise to consider how our understanding of punishment has evolved. While we largely reject public humiliation as a formal judicial tool today, preferring incarceration and rehabilitation, at least in theory, the concept of public shaming hasn't entirely vanished. We see echoes of it in modern online culture, where social media can become a digital pillory, amplifying mistakes and subjecting individuals to widespread, often anonymous, condemnation. The speed and reach of such digital shaming arguably dwarf the localized impact of a medieval town square. However, the key difference lies in the institutionalization of the act. In the Middle Ages, these were sanctioned, formalized components of the justice system, a deliberate strategy by authorities to assert power and enforce obedience. It was a reflection of a world where individual dignity, as we conceive it today, was often secondary to communal harmony and religious morality. The Church, along with secular powers, played a significant role in dictating judgments and punishments, often intertwining penance with public shame. Understanding these methods helps us appreciate the intricate tapestry of medieval life, a world where fear, faith, and community played pivotal roles in maintaining order. It reminds us that justice, throughout history, has always been a reflection of the society that enacts it, revealing its values, its fears, and its unique forms of cruelty. The public humiliation of the Middle Ages, while brutal, was a remarkably effective and undeniably human way of controlling behavior. In a world without pervasive police forces or sophisticated carceral systems, it was a raw, visceral approach to justice, played out for all to see, and designed to leave an impression that lingered for a lifetime.